And it's really fascinating as well as distressing looking at the different nuances of how this pandemic, the work from home kind of trend is impacting women across the board. You're saying that essentially for women at a certain level of I guess, a junior level across the finance industry, the lack of face time with their managers is really quite damaging?
That's correct. Thank you for having me. It is, because it's hard enough for a woman to be heard in a meeting in person. It's that much harder when we're on Zoom, because it compounds the biases that many people already face, and the imposter syndrome that a lot of women face about, do I belong? Am I supposed to be here? Again, that gets magnified along with the impact of senior managers not getting to have FaceTime with them.
And this really is just one aspect of looking at the way that this pandemic, downturn, this recession. A lot of people have been calling it, a pink recession, because it has, in a heavier way impacted women in the workplace.
That's absolutely true. In fact, here in the States, we call it a she-cession, because more women are actually impacted than men, which is very, very different. So normally in recessions, the wage gap between women and men shrink because more men get out of work. But now with this she-cession, the wage gap, unfortunately, is increasing. And 2.2 million women in the States lost their jobs between February and November. 1 in 4 women are thinking about leaving the workforce. And as you mentioned, millennial women are hit really, really hard. The burnout's real, the emotional labor. A lot of millennial women are also moms, have younger children. And women historically during natural disasters, which I think we can call the pandemic into that category, take on the emotional labor in addition to the unpaid labor at home. And if you're a Black woman, that emotional labor is so much more compounded by everything else that's happening in the States with racial inequality.
At the same time, has there been a real realization in the plight of the working parent now that so many parts of the workforce are working from home? They've got their kids from home because schools are closed, because, daycare centres are not available. Is there a point of reckoning that out of the other end of this pandemic, there should be, policy changes or a better recognition that this is what working families deal with day in, day out, with or without a pandemic?
Absolutely. And we are really hopeful. So right now, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It is not integrated. We are experiencing work-life overlap. And that millennial woman in finance, she's experienced it the entire time, because when you're 25 to 40 years old, you're in your peak career earnings, but you're also in your peak childbearing years. And there are a lot of assumptions that are made about whether or not you want to have children or not. And that happens well beforehand. However, in addition to the overlap that she's experiencing, men are also experiencing that overlap. We have now fully taken off the mask of what's happening in the home. You see kids going in and out of these Zooms. Through our research, we actually found that twice as many men are doing 5 or more hours of unpaid childcare at home. Now, women are still doing more, but the really interesting part of our research, the silver lining we're calling it, is the more men contribute to the unpaid labor at home, the greater, significantly greater, women believe and report that their productivity and satisfaction increases in their paid work, which shouldn't be surprising. And so we're actually really hopeful, because we're hopeful that the flexibility is not just desired by women anymore. The Believe programs, the flexible work schedules are now going to be wanted by men. There's a weakening in traditional gender norms and a shift in what's really valued by everybody.
That's pretty encouraging. So do you expect businesses to actually start adopting this sort of mentality?
Well, I think you're seeing it. I know you're seeing it here in the States. Google even just announced that they're going to look at work from home, flexible work on a more permanent basis. And working from home 100% is not ideal. But we don't need to be in an office 5 days a week anymore. And we have found that people are really productive when they don't have to have a commute. And so I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility. I think a hybrid work model is going to become the norm. I think you see folks like the CEO of of the leading fashion site in Europe step down because his wife is going to focus on her career. While that's headline worthy right now, I am hopeful, we are hopeful, that it happens so much more frequently that it's no longer newsworthy at all. And men become less ashamed of creating these boundaries. So when a man leaves the office early normally to go watch his son or daughter's baseball or softball game, he says, hey, I got to leave the office, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go watch my kid's game. And so I think with this work from home and everybody's life literally overlapping, we're going to see more men be more comfortable.
And how do you make women more comfortable? Because you also mentioned the imposter syndrome, women not being as confident to ask for raises or be heard.
Sure. So it's actually really interesting. We have monthly webinars at our Center for Women in Business at Rutgers. And one of the ones we did a couple months ago, or about a month ago, was on how to prep for performance reviews and promotions virtually. And when we started the event, we asked everybody, how many of you are going to ask for a raise this year? 38% said yes. Then 50 minutes after we gave some tips, make yourself 5% different, have everything documented, all of your accomplishments, et cetera. And some other basic things, 67% said, I'm going to ask for a raise now. And that's real impact. So one is educating these millennial women to be confident, to know you deserve the compensation, to be paid equally for what your counterparts are doing, that you put in the work. And on top of all of that, be able to ask for the raise and believe in yourself. Now, another way to do that is mentoring programs. And one of the things that's been lost in this virtual environment is we need to create more established mentoring programs and across genders as well. So it's really important to have people that look like you in positions of leadership, but it's also important, and it works both ways, to have male mentors. So men actually get a significant benefit by having a mentoring relationship, either as the mentor or the mentee with a woman, because it makes them more aware of the challenges that exist as well.